Okay, welcome back, everyone, to another great episode of The Human Role. So today I'm here with Libby DeLucien. She is the founder of WootRecruit and also Sell, Convert, and Clean, but she's also an author of One Layer Deep. So Libby has an amazing background, great story on what led her here today. Many of you may know of her in my network. Some of you may not. So Libby, thanks so much for joining us today. Happy to have you on. I wanted to just allow you the floor to kind of give some background on just your entire experience and kind of what led you here today to have all these different businesses. And then we'll, of course, get into each one as we start.
Just like with everybody else, we have difficult times in our lives. It's so funny. I think when so many people shy away from difficult times or struggles, but I think that's where change happens. And so for me, it was going through a really bad divorce and a custody battle and having to control some of my time. So what I do, I actually started cleaning and organizing houses because I had to leave a long career that I had during this custody battle so that I could say I had time for my kids. And so I started cleaning and organizing because it was low startup. During that divorce, I kind of lost everything. And from there, it just grew. We took off. Our cleaning business reached about 2 million in the first few years. And then from there, I spun off softwares. And so we have a recruiting software because I could get customers, but I couldn't hire fast enough. And the traditional means of recruiting was really slow for high turnover industries, for frontline labor. And then from there, the second software spun from there as well, just seeing another gap in our industry, which is a quoting tool. And then you know how you do one of those weird things where you just want something and you really don't know why you want it? And I wanted to write a book. I wanted to tell my story and write that book. And then the book spun from there as well as just kind of seeing a mentor. I had a mentor who wrote a book and he really encouraged me to do it. And so I took that leap and then we wrote One Layer Deep.
Great background story and very true that through all trials and tribulations, a lot of times you find yourself or like your new self, right? That you didn't even know was even in there or maybe was being hidden in some way, shape, or form. So we make it work however we see fit, right? And so it seems like you did an amazing job. And you're here today, right? So I'm sure that's just got to be your golden ticket or whatever, you want to call it, to going through that and making it through. So kudos to you for that. And look, you worked on multiple businesses, right? So we just talked about WootRecruit, we just talked about One Layer Deep. So what problems in people operations? I know you mentioned you couldn't hire fast enough, right? So you went ahead and started your own platform, but was there anything else outside of that that caused you to get into the WootRecruit world, but then also writing One Layer Deep? What gaps, within the industry were you seeing?
So, a lot of gaps that I saw in the industry, and because we primarily focus on helping small businesses, and it's home service. And one of the biggest gaps I saw was it's so different to hire like a cleaning technician, a field technician, a garage door installer versus like a COO of a company. The process is so different, but the gap I saw was all of the advice that we were trying to do and when we sought advice as an owner, we were taking like that advice of how I hire a COO and trying to hire a cleaning technician. And it's just a different type of hire. And I saw a lack of like education when it came to how do we hire frontline labor. And so with WootRecruit, we sped up the process and we used tech to make it fast. But I also realized that it didn't matter how many qualified applicants I could deliver to our customers. They still had a gap in like, how do I interview them? Like, what questions do I ask? What makes a great cleaning technician? And the other gap I saw was just because you own a company, maybe you were great in the field and great at doing the trade, doesn't mean you're going to be good at HR. Hiring is like a learned skill. Interviewing is like sales. You have to practice, you have to learn. Just because you own the company doesn't mean you can ask the questions you want and do what you want. There are also rules and laws that we have to follow. And the gap was a lot of owners don't even know these rules. And they were doing some things during their recruiting process. And so with our software, we won't let them violate any of those. Like, hey, no, like, let's educate you. Just because some mentor or you read it somewhere that was an article 20 years ago says, oh, ask them for their social security number in their application. We're like, oh, no. Oh, honey, we can't do that. And they're like, but so-and-so said. I'm like, but we don't care what so-and-so said. So that was a huge gap, and it made way for us not just to be a software, but to really help coach and teach small business owners just on the really basic core fundamental of like, how do I conduct a proper interview? What does an application look like, or what should it say? Because they're digging up applications from 20 years ago. And so that was the one thing. And then the other gap that we saw, that working and even owning my own home service business and then working with other home service people when it came to Win Layer Deep was, they were doing things and writing processes and SOPs, but they weren't taking into account how was this person absorbing it? Like, when were they reading this? So it goes back to the recruiting, like I just said. Just because you make the sales SOP doesn't mean that that's the way the salesperson would read it or digest it or even know where to find it. It's really making them like step out of that owner role and saying, hey, if I'm writing this for a salesperson, a cleaner, a COO, it needs to change for every role.
Music to my ears, right? Just because you're a CEO of a company doesn't mean you understand every single role, or your perspective of a role isn't necessarily what it really is, right? So when I've said many times on past episodes, when I had started off in payroll, I used to get the response of, all you do is click a button, right? And it's like, no, no, there's so much compliance that goes into it, right? Like, the setup has to be right. The overtime calculations have to be right. Depending on what state you're in, to your point, Libby, there's so many different laws. It's the same thing for HR. You typically cannot have the same onboarding documents for someone in Georgia versus Florida versus New York, California, right? There's different tax forms. So great that you've identified that gap and just acknowledge that just because you've been in a seat or you're experienced, you typically are experienced in your own way. And so the world is growing. And so once you get to a certain level, naturally, you do have to release control a little bit. And so you may lose sight on what others are doing and sight of the world changing, right? I love when people go to Google and they're like, oh, I found this article. Okay, what year was that?
Oh yeah. And we always say, hey, we don't do HR, but like what we're going to teach you is just like the basic fundamental federal stuff, because every state is different. Always check with your state. Oh, somebody asked me a question yesterday about, but ChatGPT said, I'm like, ChatGPT is great. I love AI, but it's garbage in, garbage out. You don't know who put something in it. You're also going to get that output of the stuff like people injecting into it, unless you ask it specifically for your state law, reference the article, the labor law, versus if not, it's just going to go crawl and find somebody's blog and you don't know if that's wrong or right.
Absolutely. You also got to be careful what you put into AI too, right? Don't put all of your company's information. So very good points there. But okay, so you kind of dipped into this a little bit. Your book introduces like the methodology around like the micro playbooks, right? And so
Yes.
Can you explain what that is, but then also how different it is from like the traditional SOPs that we're used to?
Absolutely. So, micro playbook is bite-sized pieces focused on easily digestible systems that really solve very specific things. Typically, these are maybe recurring problems or tasks in the business. And think of micro as like the TikTok of SOPs. They're about 250 words in length. If it's a video, you're looking under about a minute and a half video or a 90-second read. But it's built for real world application to create speed and clarity. When we're talking about an SOP, traditionally SOPs in length are like 10 to 30 pages, where ours are more like the TikTok version. When we think SOPs, they're rarely read or referenced. Our micro playbooks are designed for more of daily use. And then let's just say like the tone, a tone of an SOP is more formal or more corporate, where in the micro playbooks, it's more conversational, clear, and specific. And one thing that we do with the micro playbooks versus like an SOP is we have a process to how you need to actually make it. It's more around, it's 5 steps. And first you need to brainstorm it. It's like, what's the issue you're trying to solve over and over and over? Then we need to create it, write the short description, clear, like, hey, this is how you do this, very specific. Then the next one is we need to test it or simulate it. And that's where I said, if I wrote a SOP for a field technician, how would they reference it, simulate it? Are they going to be installing a garage door, or are they going to be in a master bathroom shower trying to say, how do I clean this marble? Versus the traditional SOP is long, it's lengthy, it's not necessarily housed with the specific role in mind. I made this mistake years ago. We made SOPs for our field staff, but they couldn't even really open Google Docs on their phone. So it's like, okay, so you want to brainstorm it, you want to then draft it, create it. From there, you simulate it. What would this person be doing when they would need this article? They're not going to be sitting in their car or sitting in an office chair on a desk. Are they going to be on a phone? Are they going to be in a house? Are they going to be in a building? And then when it comes to it, where do you house it? Right? Storing it where the right person can actually find it. So my background is in organizing. I have so many customers that love, I call it like digital hoarding. But where are you storing it so that that right person can find it at the right time? And then the distribution of it, which traditional SOPs, they're stored. But with the micro playbooks, we train and reinforce on a constant because they're so short, bite-sized pieces that you can easily kind of create that culture of playbooks with weekly drops. Like we're like, hey, don't forget this cute. Like they're just like the TikTok. They're very consumable, very easy to share, and very easy to distribute. Versus like going in a drive and them sitting there. One, because our attention spans have all changed. I find myself, even my attention span, if I get like the lengthy email, I'm like, my attention gets less and less as I read line by line. So just think of our staff. We know this by the way that content is being created and way people are consuming content. And so if you want them to consume your processes, your systems, your SOPs, think micro versus the macro.
The attention span is just insane now, right? I think I saw a stat recently where it was like 15 seconds or something crazy. So I was like so shocked and in awe that you can get your clips down with this much information that is needed, right? Down to what, like a minute and a half, 2 minutes, because I think that'll just keep people engaged. And even if they are only watching the first bit, like I'm sure you're catchy enough, right, to keep them intrigued and engaged, but not like to your point. If you're a 20-page document, if you're trying to do something on TikTok for like 5 to 6 minutes, right? Where they're just like, okay, no, like I'm just looking. And even me, myself, I am guilty of that. Unfortunately, sometimes it's like, oh, if I don't, oh, never mind, even if I think it might be good. Oh. So yeah, so you do have the perfect roadmap of things. And another good point that you made was just people in the field are totally different than people in the office, right? They're typically more trade driven. Yeah, they're just not, what's basic to someone who is used to being around computers and getting into drives and having the right applications or knowing how to download the applications. Totally different from someone who's out working in the field, out in a warehouse. I think it was great that you have identified that, right? And have made sure you've had a system that accommodates all aspects of a business. It is difficult sometimes when you're behind the seat CEO or CFO, and you're looking at numbers and so forth, right? You do lose sight on the people that are actually doing the actual work and what they specifically need. And a lot of times I've noticed just in my experience is sometimes they may not have the newest phone or something may not be configured. So it's like just downloading a simple app may not work. And it's not, that's just their thing. They don't care to have anything flashy and that should be totally fine. And we should accommodate, that in any way, shape, or form. And curious to know what out of those, so you said brainstorm it, create it, test it, or simulate. Mm-hmm. How's it distributed? So you guys remember those. Is there a specific step within that you see organizations typically miss?
I think it depends on the organization or the owner or CEO, whoever's drafting these playbooks, right? Some of the brainstorm is sometimes over brainstormed. And, I have a little process that we run because you're like, how do you compress it all and get it all in there? Well, it's like, what does this person really need right now? Cut all the BS out, cut all the fluff, cut all the extra stuff, like the extra words, and then like just execute, get it done so that they can get what they need on the other side. And so if you really take yourself through that, because so many people over brainstorm, then they create. And then so a lot of people, what I see also going into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is giving you, it's creating an SOP for you. Like it's a very wordy, lengthy, proper, like structure, corporate sounding playbook that's going to bore your field staff or even your office. So just watch that. But I think the biggest one that, because I work with a lot of owners in the small business sector, a lot of owners are disorganized. I hear this all the time. They're like, oh, I save all this stuff in Google Drive because people share like documents and processes and SOPs, and they're like collecting them because maybe they could use them, modify them. But they're very disorganized. So they don't know how to organize it so that their team can find it because they can't even find it. And I think it's an owner, it's a visionary. So if we're talking like more visionary trait, it's like that sparkly brain. I want to keep going. Organizing is not most visionary superpower. The other day I said, everyone needs a mental garage sale. Just think of how much stuff we have in our minds, how much digital clutter we have right now. And then we wonder why, like, we're slow, growing slow, or our staff is frustrated, or maybe the staff is inefficient. They can't find things. And so we need a mental garage sale to really like cut out all the noise and the clutter so that we can then focus on what's really important when it comes to the business.
Yeah, look, there's so much. And when you think about it, just all the different platforms to be on, right? Between not just, Facebook or LinkedIn, if you clue in TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat, if people are using that, like there's just a plethora of things. Now there's like Substack, there's tons of different things and platforms for people. And, you add in the chat GPT layer or the Geminis or whatever, there's just so many areas for us to get information from. So I think it could be a brain overload. And then we're constantly having to, I think every day, almost like reinvent ourselves or see what's next or see what's new and what's out there. So it's almost like once you get one process in place, there's another one, right? Or maybe you're trying to beat the one that's in place. And so your mind, so to your point, yes, we do need a garage sale. I'm gonna make a post-it note of that. All right, Libby. So, okay, last question I wanted to kind of ask you is: do you have any like real, like a client example that you'd or success story that you'd feel comfortable kind of sharing with us on someone who kind of came in dire need and now is just flowing, going with the flow, and super super good with your one layer deep?
It's the same story over and over and over. And I made the mistake as well in the past. And, at every threshold of a business, there's a different struggle. And they're almost the same. They just happen at different levels or intensities. And I was working with a client, and, one of the questions I asked her is like, people don't understand the concept of what one layer deep means. And one layer deep is just, what is the action before the result? It's simplifying everything. It's asking, what does the business really need? Or if you're using it for a personal use, it's like, what do I really want? Cut all the fluff. Like, we tell ourselves so many lies. We self-sabotage, we overcommit, and we're setting ourselves up for failure. And then because we did that, we don't want to do the hard thing. We don't want to actually execute. We're like paralyzed. It's that analysis by paralysis kind of feeling. And so then we don't get the result we're looking for. So she's like, how do I achieve one layer deep? How? And I said, a simple way right now is actually work with your employees. So what we did was we did a time audit study, and they tracked what they did for 5 days. Just every time they switch a task, they write it down and how long they did it, and then who could do it. A one is anyone. A number two is, I think it was a multiple. And then a number three was only me. And even the owner should be doing this, and CEOs, because if you're the only one that can do it, like that's a bottleneck. You really don't realize it until you write it down. And so we did that time audit study for 5 days. And then we do this interview called the Day in the Life of, where we interview all of her employees. Then we kind of compare it to the time audit study to see like how inefficient, how many layers are there to everything right now? How many logins, how many clicks is it taking them to actually get to what they're trying to find? As a kid, you guys remember like the lollipop commercial? How many licks does it take to get to the center of a lollipop? Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to do like a parody. It's like, how many clicks does it take to get to the like solution or what we're trying to get to? And just measure how many tabs do they have to have open just to do their job? And I think we're in a consumption world where we keep buying tech and trying to keep buying solutions. And we think that like another software is going to solve it. But in reality, it's probably not. You're just adding more layers of complexity. So we did that with her time audit study, Day in the Life of. We were able to analyze what tech was she not using, what was she paying for, no one was logging into, how many times people are handing the same task back and forth off. And we were able to give her like an efficiency rate of each employee. And she was just mortified. She's like, oh my God, I'm thinking that like a $15 an hour employee they're not that expensive, but when they're 3 times slower or 3 times inefficient, that's the cost of like a middle level or high level employee. And what we are trying to teach people when it comes to one layer deep is it's not the employee's fault. We made it too complicated because we added too many layers to their job just to getting basic day-to-day tasks done. And so how do we take that back and create a one layer deep operational system in their business?
Kudos to you. Cheers, everybody. This is a repeat thing that continuously is coming up in speaking engagements I've been at and other episodes as well. We really just need to pay attention to our people. And even in business, a lot of times you get caught up in just the numbers and what's next instead of focusing on like what's in your face right now. If you're thinking about it, sometimes she may have thought, oh, yeah, just an employee, that's $15 an hour. But for you to lay it out like that and to show her that like she could actually be saving money and she's making their life that much difficult. I bet the employees wanted to give you a big hug if they didn't already.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes when we come in, I do this in our business every 6 months, by the way, in all 3 businesses, and it helps us stay lean and move fast and profitable. And when you do this with your employees, whether like even my own or when we go into other companies and help them do this, employees can push back because they're a little nervous, and we're not trying to take their job. We're trying to help them do a better job at their job and make their job easier. And that's really the goal, because how many times have we like hired and onboarded somebody and you kind of let them be, and then you're frustrated because you're not getting the results from them, and you're like, what are they really doing? And I'm like, have you ever really asked them if what they're doing, or do they have more time to help? We haven't. And this process to try to get to one layer deep is really insightful, to just say our onboarding is not working, our training is broken. And I've never, in every time I've done it, I've never found where people were malicious, like intentionally not working. It's just that we had overcomplicated or give them a half broken system to follow, and they were just trying to make it work.
Very true. Ding, ding, ding. I hope everyone listens, takes that into consideration, and also reaches out to Libby, grabs her book, because as you can see, it is very insightful. So I'll make sure I have the links for you as well, just because I think from a business perspective, it's needed, right? And I know Libby would be more than happy to connect with all of you. So please send her a note. She'll be attached to this post too as well. So Libby, thank you so much for your insight. You are doing great work, right? Not only with WootRecruit, but also with One Layer Deep. And I just think the whole trajectory from brainstorming to testing to, pushing it out, housing it, all of these are great perspectives, because you're not only covering from a C-suite executive position, you're also speaking for the employee population, right? And so from a C-suite level, that's also your client, right? From an HR level, my perspective is the employee population, they are my clients, right? So good stuff. So really appreciate having you on. Thank you for so much great insight. Yeah, we'll follow up the TikTok of SOPs, you guys. Don't forget that slogan. Go follow Libby. And we'll catch up with you in a couple of months too, to see what else is in the horizon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
We'll see you in another couple of weeks for another great episode. Bye.